Think about a World Cup match, any match. You know exactly where you were. You remember the smell of the place, the noise around you, who was sitting next to you. That is not a coincidence. Your brain stores World Cup memories differently from almost anything else. But here's what nobody tells you. That match was never just a match. While you were watching, real things were happening. Entire economies were changing direction. Wars were being paused. Governments were falling. And in at least one documented case, a World Cup literally saved lives on a scale that no hospital could ever achieve. That's not a metaphor. It actually happened. And it all starts with a trophy that almost destroyed the country that won it. The FIFA World Cup is the largest televised event in human history. Not the second largest, the largest. The 2022 final was watched by roughly 1.5 billion people. To understand what that means, if you tried to shake hands with every person who watched that match, it would take more than 40 years without ever stopping to sleep. That is nearly 1/5 of humanity staring at the same field at the same moment. No war, no election, no natural disaster. Nothing has captured the planet's collective attention quite like the World Cup. And when something dominates the attention of 1/5 of humanity, the consequences in the real world stop being trivial. In 1969, El Salvador and Honduras went to war, a real war. Soldiers dying, bombs falling, borders closed. The conflict became known as the Football War because it took place during a series of World Cup qualifying matches. But there is a part of this story that rarely appears in the summaries. Football did not cause the war. The tensions were already there. Political, economic, and territorial problems had been building for years. The match was simply the nearest spark, a spark that landed on a barrel that was already full of gunpowder. And if football can serve as the spark for a conflict, it can also become the catalyst for peace. In the mid-1990s, Ivory Coast was trapped in a brutal civil conflict. The country was deeply divided. Violence seemed endless. Years later, when the national team achieved a historic qualification for the 2006 World Cup, something unexpected happened. Didier Drogba, the team's biggest star, appeared on national television. He knelt before the cameras, and he made an emotional appeal for peace. Days later, a ceasefire was announced. Negotiators involved in the process later said that the moment created an opportunity that traditional diplomacy had failed to produce. Football did not solve the conflict by itself, but it opened a door that had seemed completely shut. Every time a World Cup approaches, the host nation makes the same promise: growth, prosperity, economic success, a return on investment. And most of the time, reality falls far short of the promises. Brazil spent billions of dollars preparing for the 2014 World Cup. South Africa invested enormous amounts of money ahead of the 2010 tournament. Many of the stadiums built for these events later became underused monuments to ambition. But decades of economic research revealed something unexpected. The real impact is often not found in the infrastructure. Not in the stadiums, not in the construction projects. The most lasting effect usually happens inside people's minds. Perception. When a country receives global attention for weeks, millions of people begin looking at it differently. Investors, companies, tourists, consumers. South Korea provides one of the clearest examples. After the 2002 World Cup, the country's international visibility increased dramatically. The world started paying attention. In many cases, the products had not changed. The technology had not suddenly transformed overnight, but perception had changed. And sometimes perception alone is enough to influence real economic decisions. In 2006, German researchers studied something nobody expected. During the World Cup hosted by Germany, heart-related medical emergencies increased significantly on days when the German national team played. The pattern was clear. The more stressful the match, the stronger the effect. The explanation was equally surprising. For the human brain, an emotionally intense sporting event can trigger physiological responses that are remarkably similar to those triggered by real danger. Stress hormones are released, heart rate rises, blood pressure increases. For vulnerable individuals, that can become a genuine health risk. But there was another finding that was even more surprising. In places where emotional involvement with the tournament was lower, some indicators moved in the opposite direction. In other words, the World Cup is not just entertainment. It produces measurable physical effects, and those effects depend on who you are, where you live, and which team you support. Now we arrive at the most important part of the story. The World Cup was created with an extraordinarily ambitious goal. Jules Rimet, one of the men most responsible for creating the tournament, believed that sport could bring nations closer together. He had witnessed the devastation of the First World War, and he genuinely believed that if countries competed on a football field, they might be less likely to compete on a battlefield. In a way, he was right, and in a way, he was wrong. Throughout history, the World Cup has been used to unite people. It has created bridges. It has opened dialogue, but it has also been used by governments as a tool of propaganda. It has strengthened nationalist narratives. It has projected political power. In 1978, for example, Argentina won the World Cup while living under a military dictatorship. While crowds celebrated inside stadiums, serious human rights abuses were taking place throughout the country. That contrast perfectly captures the paradox of the World Cup. The same event can create unity and division. It can inspire cooperation and manipulation. It can promote peace and intensify rivalries. It can create unforgettable memories while influencing decisions that extend far beyond football. Jules Rimet imagined a football tournament. What emerged was something much larger, a social phenomenon capable of influencing emotions, economies, governments, and international relations. Now go back to the match you remembered at the beginning, that memory that still feels incredibly vivid. You remember where you were, you remember the people around you, you remember the exact moment, but while you were watching that game, other things were happening. Somewhere, an important negotiation was being finalized. Somewhere else, an economic decision was being made. Someone was celebrating, someone was suffering, someone's life was changing direction. The World Cup looks like a sporting event with political consequences, but maybe reality is the other way around. Maybe it is a massive political, economic, and social event that simply uses football as its universal language. And there is one detail that helps explain why. No government willingly gives up control over how its national team represents the country, because they understand something that millions of fans feel without realizing it. When those 11 players step onto the field, they stop representing only a team. For many people, they become an identity, a history, a flag, an entire nation. And that is exactly why a simple football match can produce consequences that extend far beyond 90 minutes.